The supermarket was unusually quiet that evening, the kind of silence that feels heavy, as if holding its breath before something life-changing happens. At the far end of the bakery section, a small man in a faded shirt, patches stitched by hand, stood nervously rubbing his palms together. His eyes were tired, the kind of tiredness that comes from years of losing silently. He looked around to make sure no one was watching, then slowly approached the bakery counter. The young worker behind the counter smiled politely, but the man hesitated, swallowing a lump of shame he had carried too long. Finally, with a trembling voice that cracked halfway, he asked the question that froze the room, "Do you have an expired cake? I want to buy it, for my daughter's birthday." He lowered his gaze, as if the floor understood his pain better than people ever could, and right behind the shelves, unseen by him, stood a millionaire, Arav Malhotra, one of the store's biggest investors, who had just arrived for a routine check. He wasn't meant to hear that, but he did. And it struck him harder than any business failure ever had. Red heart if you believe kindness still exists, and if stories like this deserve to reach the world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these messages travel farther. Red heart Arav froze, staring through the gap between the racks. The man's voice echoed in his mind. A father asking for expired cake. Not for himself, but for his little girl. Something twisted inside him, a mixture of guilt, sadness, and disbelief. This was his store, his empire, and yet someone was begging for expired food within it. The bakery boy looked confused, not sure how to respond, and finally said they didn't keep expired items. The man nodded politely, apologized unnecessarily, and turned away with a small, defeated smile that hurt more than tears ever could. Because that smile said, "I expected rejection. I'm used to it." Arav followed him quietly, watching the man walk through the aisles counting coins in his palm, literally coins, before stopping at a shelf of cheap candles. He picked a pack, hesitated, calculated, and put it back. He moved to a packet of noodles, then a small juice box, but eventually returned them too. Instead, he picked up a single packet of bread that was on discount, holding it with the dignity of a man who hides his heartbreak behind practicality. He moved to the billing counter slowly, like someone carrying invisible weights on his back. Arav walked behind him, observing every movement, wondering how many nights this man had eaten less just so his child could eat more. At the counter, the cashier told him the price, an amount slightly higher than he expected because the discount didn't apply anymore. The man's fingers shook as he counted his coins again. They fell short. By 4 rupees. Just 4. He looked up with eyes full of apology and murmured, "I'm sorry. I thought I had enough. Please remove the bread." He stepped back, ready to leave empty-handed, but before the cashier could respond, Arav stepped forward and touched the man's shoulder gently. The man flinched, startled, as if human kindness was something foreign to him. Arav asked him to wait, then turned to the cashier and said, "Bill everything again." The father panicked, thinking he was being scolded or reported, and quickly said he wasn't stealing anything. He wasn't begging. He only wanted something affordable for his daughter. His words tumbled out like they had been trapped inside him for years. Arav stopped him softly and asked, "What's your daughter's name?" The man whispered, "Roshni. She turned 7 today." Arav exhaled deeply, something breaking inside him. He remembered his own childhood. His father had died early, and he knew what it felt like to have nothing. He remembered the nights his mother cried silently while pretending everything was fine. This man's pain felt like a mirror of his past. So Arav gently guided him back to the bakery. But instead of expired cakes, he ordered the biggest fresh cake they had, white frosting, pink roses, and "Happy Birthday, Roshni," written in bright red cream. The father stared at it as if it were a dream he didn't have permission to touch. Arav didn't stop there. He filled a basket with gifts, snacks, candles, juice boxes, and a small doll wrapped in plastic but shining like magic to a 7-year-old. The father begged him not to spend so much, saying he didn't deserve this. That he was just a poor mechanic whose shop had shut down 5 months ago. That he had been searching for work every day but returned home with empty pockets and heavier guilt. Arav placed a hand on his shoulder and said the words the man had long forgotten how to receive, "You're a good father." "That's enough." Tears rolled down the man's cheeks silently, falling on the floor of the bakery. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed, thanking Arav repeatedly, each thank you softer than the previous one as emotion strangled his voice. Arav paid the bill and walked him outside. Before parting, he asked the men to come to his office the next morning. The father looked confused, unsure, afraid it was charity. But Arav smiled and said, "No. It's a job interview." That night, when the father reached home carrying the cake and gifts, his little girl screamed with joy, hugging him so tightly he felt his heart melt. He watched her dance around the room, decorating their tiny home with candles and crumbs of happiness. For the first time in months, he didn't feel like a failure. He felt like a father again, and in another part of the city, Arav sat alone in his luxury apartment, thinking about how close he had once been to a life like that man's, and how important it was to lift someone when life tries to drown them. That day changed him too. Speech balloon before the story ends. Please comment below. Kindness is priceless. The next morning, the father arrived at Arav's office. He didn't get charity. He got a job, an honest job that valued his skills. And with it came dignity, stability, and the chance to give his daughter the childhood she deserved. Red Heart, if this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps such stories reach millions who need hope today. Red Heart. And so, a simple question about an expired cake ended up rewriting 2 lives, one healed, and one awakened. Because sometimes, all it takes is hearing someone's unspoken pain to remind us what being human truly means.